will start. The May 2017 meeting of the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals is now open. We have two decisions. The application of Aaron Dannenberg, case number 2960, 116 Willow Street.
I move we approve this application as proposed.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And on the application of Ryan and Mulberry, 80 Post Crossing, case number 2962.
I move we approve this decision as proposed.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have four requests for adjournment. 2944, the Village of Southampton. 2959, number 71 Teacups LLC. 2963, Mildred Butno and trustees. And one of the new ones, 2966, Caitlin B. Olenowski, 61 Corrigan Street.
I move we adjourn the aforementioned cases.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us down to the pending cases, of which we only have two. First one will be 2961 Thomas Fitzgerald III, 352 Catton's Neck Lane.
This to me?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Good evening. Sipped in my
Chick coming tonight?
Who?
Chick?
I assume so. He usually calls it as well. I haven't heard from him.
Just a little bit of housekeeping.
You want to hold this one until he gets here?
Oh, I would really like to proceed. I feel bad.
We haven't got...
Here's Chick
Here
now.
he is.
There he is, Chick. You heard my prayer.
They don't have the cameras on for the
Well, then
people
in
to see.
return, you have to be short-winded.
It's going to be a necessity.
keep you here all night.
Hey, Charlie, these working?
Is this the new one?
Yes.
The TVs aren't working.
Just a little bit of housekeeping, if I may.
Yeah.
We had the one at 58, what was it? No. It was
Mildred Butno?
Greenlaw.
Greenlaw.
You had it on pending cases, you had it on for decision, and we switched over because we have to re-advertise.
The button, right?
Yeah, but no, exactly. You did
It's been
that?
adjourned, yeah.
Oh, perfect, thank
We
you.
took care of it.
I just wanted to make sure, thank you. Yeah, it disappeared somehow from this calendar, so it's not number 3 on your old calendar. Thank you.
They update that about every 6
Not on the pending
hours.
cases.
Okay, thank
Put
you.
it on the pending cases.
So we're here, originally we were here to try to amend the covenant to recognize that the buffer didn't have to be as significant, but I thought that the board had some issues with that. So what we did is we've gone back, and Tim, Mary's Design, who's always a pleasure to have with me, took another look at it. And what we've done here is we have proposed a revegetation of the area up to the covenant line. So we don't, to the extent that I've requested an amendment to the covenant, we'll withdraw that. So
Yes.
what you have here at this dug pond, which was dug, actually, Tim gave you some history on that, I think in the 1990 or so. What you have at this dug pond here is a proposal to revegetate the area to exactly the way it was before some clearing took place. And then there were also some concerns about replacement of the trees in the area. Now, it's important to note that issues of compliance with the wetlands law held aside for a second. These trees, with the exception of 1 or 2, maybe 3 of them, were not in the covenanted area. This was a covenant that grew out of a trustee's wetlands moratorium, relief from the moratorium. It was just before you guys had wetlands jurisdiction. So what is proposed here is to revegetate this area with species that makes more sense, true, actual freshwater wetlands species, red maple. I'll let Tim talk about that in more detail. A couple of these things that this does, I know Ms. White was concerned. I think I took a walk down there today prior to this time, there was a significant visual buffer between her property to the east and this property. We're trying to reestablish that to create more of a privacy, to recreate more of a privacy issue. So the whole idea is to return the thing not only to the status quo ante, but because of the introduction of more compatible and common sense species to improve the situation. Again, there's no request for any further improvements on the property. We're simply trying to bring the property back to the way it was and in conformance with the covenant. Now, this area that you'll see to the, I guess that's the west of the property, which is lawn, was never part of the covenanted area. What we've done is we've revegetated into the line where the covenant line was, and in addition, created some additional plantings of trees outside of the covenant area, but nevertheless within the 150 foot. So, Tim, if you wanted to talk further about that, you're better qualified than me to do it.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Tim Rump from Maris Design for the applicant. As Mr. Bennett was describing, we've shown the covenanted wetland line on the new plans, and we've expanded the wetland restoration portion of the project up to the landward, or that edge of the wetlands line that was covenanted previously in 1990. There was a survey involved and shown that there were additional 17 trees which were within what I would say the 125-foot buffer at that point, which is now under your jurisdiction. Since this...
Well, if I may, Tim, and I'm not trying to be pedantic, but it's important. This area here, as of the time of the trustees' relief from the the wetlands moratorium, this area here was not. There was no prohibition against anything going on in here as a result of the covenant. And Rick pointed out that there may be an issue in terms of the wetlands law, which is why we're coming and showing revegetation here. But this area here was not covenanted with a buffer that required any sort of anything other than grass. Indeed, the covenant, just the covenant itself, did not prohibit the removal of any of these trees, except for the one or two that were actually in the buffer. So the only establishment of a buffer was what we're reestablishing here. Right. I think that's an important note, but I apologize.
Sure. So what we've done and working with the client is that we've proposed to add trees in landward of the wetland edge, and those trees would consist of red maple and American holly, which are native wetland buffer plants, and in a location that we would hope that would help screen the house from the neighbor to the east. And just a note, if you look at the plans that we submitted, there are 3 additional red maples that are on the site that were not part of that area in the 90s. You can see them that are shown in the aerial that we have in front of you, as well as they're shown on the planting plan that I just submitted. So in addition to those trees that are remaining, we're adding another 17 or 18 additional trees in that area at this point. Just one note that I'd like to make. There was some discussion on additional fill in this area. There was no fill brought into this area. If you go down to the site and look at it, right now it's being revegetated on its own. The Phragmites is moving landward, up the slope, but the grade hasn't changed, and so I just wanted to make sure the board knew that there was no fill delivered or placed or put anywhere in this wetland buffer.
And I think Tim and I talked about it. This may be one of those cases where actual on-site visit is very, very helpful. And I would obviously we'd make it available. There's a gate there, but we can open it up. And I would recommend that go down there and look, because the prose portrayals of what has happened here, you will see immediately this is okay, but nowhere near as drastic as what has been portrayed. There was an allegation that there were dump trucks of fill. A layperson can see that there was no fill here. There was some clearing. There's some clearing in within the covenanted buffer and outside the covenanted buffer, and we're here to restore it to what lawyers call the status quo ante. That was what was happening before. So we hope you will appreciate our attempts to do this in a cooperative manner. And obviously, Mr. Voorhees will have some comments. The public may have some comments, but I think probably it's the best thing to do is to adjourn it so you can go down there and look at it and maybe get some comments from Mr. Voorhees. And of course, we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Dick?
I have a black and white version. Do you have a KC rendered version? It's very helpful.
No, the lawyer doesn't get one, and neither does the wetlands. So you want to take this one?
I can unclip that and give that to you if you'd like.
Whatever. You can mail it.
We'll get it to
We're
you.
gonna adjourn.
Or you can just take that one.
And, yeah, I don't have any further questions because we just received it tonight. I think, I checked my notes from the last meeting and there were some other details about Phragmites, root barriers and things like that. Have those been addressed in this plan?
We would like to keep those where they are. Part of the idea is that we're investing in redeveloping and restoring this wetland. If we can't stop the Phragmites from spreading, the investment in that planting will be for naught.
And the other thing I did want to note, there was some comment by, I think, one of either the neighbors or a lawyer criticizing the core log protocol, and that's been used up and down Agawam, approved by this board. The whole idea is actually beneficial to keep any sort of soil out of the wetlands. It stabilizes. It's made of some sort of coconut mesh. Tim, you'll explain it, and it deteriorates. So it's a recognized method when dealing with revegetation on freshwater wetlands. The other thing I do want to note is that the wetlands line actually, and maybe it is because of this pond being dug, actually has shifted somewhat to the actual wetlands line has shifted somewhat to the east.
As John had mentioned, what I've done is just passed up some photos of a project that the board approved for us on Lake Agawam in 2012. It was the removal of Phragmites and the reestablishment of a wetland fringe along Lake Agawam. And the first photo that you'll see is a...
Can you put the photos on the page?
Sure.
You have a separate check too? Is
Yes.
there an extra one?
Yeah, this one right here.
The first photo that you see is the installation of the core log along the shoreline. What we've done is, and in many situations, is we use the core logs to establish that definition between the water and the wetland edge. What happens is that core log has seed in it, wetland vegetation seed in it. So as the material and plant material starts to grow, it grows, and this will decompose over time and creates the edge. The next photo is more of a detail of how it's constructed and how it's put together and how it's anchored to the shoreline. And again, this was a project that was approved by the board 5 years ago. This was pre-Sandy. This was the July of 2012. The third photo that you'll see is August of 2013. It survived Superstorm Sandy and is kind of revegetated very well, and it's now very healthy and 5 years old. So we've used this technique in the village before, and you've seen this before, so I just wanted you to see that and have that in your file.
And the other thing I might add is that although there's always literature on this stuff that I'm not aware of, I've seen it used throughout the East End, and I've never seen it criticized by one of the agencies, but I could be wrong. Certainly this board has welcomed the use of it.
Thank you.
That's all we have for now.
That was helpful clarification. I have no further questions.
Is there anyone from the public who'd like to be heard in this application?
Good evening. Madeline Van John from Tarbert and Leicester, representing several neighbors to the property.
Can we have the names of the neighbors, please? We have the names of the neighbors.
It's all in a letter that was submitted.
Well, if you could
last
tell me what the
meeting.
names of the neighbors are, I'd appreciate it.
Names of your plans.
The White, Miss White and Mr. Wolfgruber, the Wombolds, several other neighbors around there. It's all in a letter that I submitted.
Thank you.
We would like some more time to review the plans as it was just submitted. We also, of course, want to hear what your environmental consultant has to say. Just a few quick points. There's been a lot of references to the fact that some of the clearing was outside of the covenant area. Even though it was outside of the covenant area, there's still any removal or disturbance of vegetation within 125 feet of a wetland still requires permission from this board. So it's all the same in terms of what was done illegally without permission. And regarding the core logs, my objection to that was, Lake Agawam is very different. There's a shoreline there. You're trying to stabilize a large body of water. This is just a small wetland, so it's a different situation. So we'd like to look into what they're proposing on this updated plan and see. But that was the basis of the objection for the core logs the last time, was that it's not really a shoreline. It's a small wetland. It's a little bit of a different situation. It could result in the wetland drying up. Mostly you see core logs used along Lake Georgica Pond in East Hampton, Lake Agawam here. That's generally, in my experience, tend to be where they're used, not in smaller wetlands with that tend to have more dynamic edges to them. And that appears to be what was going on here in this wetland prior to the clearing. It wasn't a defined shoreline. So again, we'd just like to request more time to review the plans, and if we could get a copy of the plans, that would be appreciated as well.
I have a question for you, Tim.
Yes, sir.
In doing the restoration, I guess one of the things you want to do is try to keep the Phragmite from growing back.
Yes.
So you've got a methodology of things you're going to do, which probably you're going to put in some kind of root barrier.
Right, that's shown on
So,
the...
maybe, describe what you're going to use, how you're going to install it, and what the success rate of the product is. I'd like to have that just for future history, so
Sure.
5 years now, we look back, did it work? Did it, is it successful? Or
Well, the project that we showed you on Lake Agawam, on both the north and south borders, we used the root barrier there, and it's been very successful.
And then in the area that's been cleared,
Yes.
have all the Phragmite been eliminated for that area? You said
No.
it was growing back now?
No, it's growing
So
back
you're going to
very
have to
rapidly.
then, you're going to have to do some more mitigation of that? So how
We'd like
are
to,
you going to
yes.
do that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'd
there's
like
an
to.
established protocol. We've involved many projects with that.
Yeah, and I can give you that if you'd like. Sure, I can put that together.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
I just have one comment to make. My name is John Wombold. I'm a neighbor to the south. Just to address Mr. Bennett's comment about the pros of no fill going in there. Both my wife and I were eyewitness to a dump truck and a bobcat being in the backyard near the dug pond. And I'm sure that the client would deny it was there. That's why we took a photograph and submitted it to the board. So we did see a dump truck with dirt on the property, and we saw a bobcat there. We unfortunately didn't take a video of them dumping dirt or putting something into the truck, but we were eyewitness to the dump truck on the property, and I just wanted to make that clear to the board. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
Just to point out again, last month, the Fitzgeralds and his lawyer used a word that it was inadvertent, the dumping. It was not inadvertent. This time, they're lying again. I mean, it's outrageous, the degree of lies, that there wasn't any fill when there was. And I still say, look, I can't mow my lawn down to the wetlands. It's wild. They, in their picture, have a very neat piece of lawn where they filled in those wetlands with the dirt that we saw. And in all fairness, I think we should dismiss the lies, and hopefully when they plan, as you said, they're getting ready to submit plans for a new house, they won't lie about that either, because every person that objected to this will be watching even more closely. Because going in again and chopping down trees and filling in dirt and then lying about it is not only neighborly, it's low-minded, and it's an affront to everybody who lives in the village.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard?
Barbara Talbaria, and we live to the west. I've lived there for 20 years. I've never seen another house because of all the trees and the vegetation. And we looked at the property when it was for sale. We went to the building department, spoke to John Foster at length because we wanted to be protected. We were considering buying the property. We were told in no uncertain terms, it's wetlands, those trees were protected, our site was protected, and you could never build outside the envelope. I don't understand why you would reward somebody who took these things down against the law and comes back to you with a plan that doesn't replace everything, but replaces it in the way they want. And they've told you the whole purpose is to build a bigger house and change the building plot. And it doesn't matter that it's affected every single neighbor, because you can see everything. And we also care about the environment, and I've lived on wetlands before. We lived on Meadowmere Place for many years. We couldn't cut one blade of grass, and I respect that. But it seems like all of a sudden that's up in smoke, and sometimes it's respected and sometimes it isn't. So I respectfully request that the entire property be put back to the way it was. And that's the way everybody here was told that's the way it's supposed to be. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard?
Yeah. I'm Leon Calvari. With my wife, I've lived there for 20 years. This is a complete fraud. We looked at the property very carefully. I was prepared to buy the property. We were told exactly how we'd be protected and exactly the nature of what the house could be changed or not changed on it, and therefore we decided to pass on it, recognizing that it would be preserved. We woke up one day and found the entire back part of our property cut down. Cut down.
Part of your property cut down?
You know what? I don't know. The reality is we had a fully protected property, and I woke up one day and found it was as if someone had cut the front of my house open, and you can just see everything out there. So they had cut all the trees down on the side of our property that faces them, and it was just a fait accompli. I'm really sorry. So honestly, from my standpoint, we've been in this town 32 years, I think. It's a complete fraud. And now to turn around, excuse me, I'm speaking, and now to turn around and sit there and say you're going to wreck this and build a much bigger house and all the rest of it, it's complete rubbish.
I'd just like to know where he lives, because I don't, you say to the west of it, west of this property?
West is across the street.
West is across the street.
We live right in front of the property.
One person, please.
Join in.
Stop.
East, Leon?
You go down his driveway.
Right.
I'm the house on the right. I butt right.
That's Wombold. If you go down his driveway, the house to the side.
In that case, I suggest
You let him
stop.
finish.
I was
May
there
I
I
speak,
was
sir?
there today. I'm just trying to understand. I'm not
By the
challenging
way,
your standing.
by the way, if you think that's Wombold, maybe your whole plan is cockeyed.
No, it's not.
Okay?
asking a
Because
question.
you go
Just asking a
down the
question.
driveway, and I'm on the right, the entire driveway.
The flag,
Yeah, the entire
So
driveway.
you're
He
to
only
the
has
right.
one driveway,
Okay, right.
Unless maybe he installed another driveway when I wasn't looking. There's one driveway, and we're on the right, sir. But we've been there a long time. I've been in this town, actually on and off for 40 years, and I've never seen
Now
anything like
define
this.
just where you live. Now we know where you live.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we wanted to know.
You realize that we understand the man, cleared this property without coming before this board, did it all on the,
QT.
yeah. But they're here now to restore what was taken down. So, I mean, they're presenting plans tonight. I would advise that you look over those plans, you look at the types of plants they're going to be using, and,
And what I'm asking for, I'm going to look through that, but I'd like my property and that whole sight line restored so that I'm not staring into a McMansion. That's what I'd like. And I'm going to have a look at the property, I'm going to look at the plans and make sure that that's in
You
fact
look at the
correct.
plans, yeah.
Thank you.
They said they're not restoring it.
If you want to speak, please come up here. It's the second time I've asked you not to do that.
Okay. I will come up and speak.
That's my wife. Thank you, sir.
No, but...
She's very
but-
nice, so I appreciate
No,
it.
that's
No,
fine.
they said they're not...
You can't have people shouting off in the audience.
No, I understand that. I've
No,
done a
no,
couple-
but they said they're not restoring all the trees that were on the 125 foot from the wetland. So they've said they're not doing that. They're just doing
Well,
what they
were planting.
choose to do.
They show trees they're replanting, that's why we're saying.
Right, but not
look at
the whole
plan.
125. But I will look at it, and absolutely. And we just got, they just presented them, so
I
that's
assure you,
fair
there's no
enough.
decision coming here tonight.
No, I understand that, and I respectfully, absolutely will look at the plans, but I just wanted to give you our perspective.
Okay,
So, thank you.
I think we get the message. Yes.
I just wanted to ask, how many trees did you say that you were going to restore?
22.
Okay, and I think there were maybe 50 cut down or more. So I don't know if that's acceptable, because I face the same horrifying view as the Cavalaris, where one day there was a forest of beautiful towering trees, and then there was a soccer field, as I said last time. And I don't think 22 would come close to replacing what they cut down in the dead of winter when they thought, when no one was around.
Do we have anybody else?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. DePietris, Mr. Voorhees. My name is Pat Notashi, and I thank you for letting me speak. I have lived with my family on Boyson Road for 25 years. We lived in North Sea for 20 years. My husband escaped from Hungary in 1957 and ended up in Southampton at age 12, so we're locals. I am concerned about the wetlands and the opportunity we have here to send a message. And I know you know more than I do, but I am on the board, the New York State Board of the Nature Conservancy. I have a PhD in botany from City University. I'm a vice chair of the board of the Carl Schurz Park Conservancy, which is a 16-acre park in New York City along the East River. I'm co-chair of the Dune Church Gardening Committee. I'm a former president of the Garden Club. So I deal with the environment every day, as you guys do. Some of it's great, some of it's terrible, some are issues, some are opportunities. A lot of them are murky, a lot of them are clear. What I see is that for 100-odd years, we've all been making mistakes with the environment. Sandy brought it home to us, and I think we're now all on notice that whatever we may have done in the past, whether it was inadvertent, accidental, or purposeful, we're now at a point where I think the village of Southampton has an opportunity to let everyone know that we're not going to tolerate any damage to our wetlands. We need to maximize them because the science has been done. It's not rocket science, it's simple science. The science proves that wetlands mitigate storm surge. They collect rainfall and reduce flooding. They absorb toxins and they absorb nitrogen. Not a lot, but anything makes a difference. So I don't understand a lot of the legal issues, the covenants, the lines. I'm not a lawyer, but I do understand that I think we're at a point where we can, you especially, can send a message that things are going to be different. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question for Chick. Neighbors seem to be concerned about the screening properties these trees that were taken down had, and now they have a new planting plan with new trees, and I don't know the size of these trees, I don't know the growth rate of these trees, I don't know how big these trees grow, so maybe you could let us know, if these trees that are on this plan will develop into the screening that the neighbors seem to be concerned about.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. My impression is, and I would also ask Tim to comment on what was there. So I think the idea is to replace it at least one for one, I believe, for what they have determined was there based on aerial photographs and other photography and information submitted by neighbors. But I don't think it's the same, it's certainly not the same size trees. They'll have to grow to that. I think that certainly the red maple is a deciduous tree, and I believe there are evergreen trees, probably red cedar, I think, it looks like to me. Again, I'm just going by photographs. So you're probably not going to get the same exact screening that was there. The American hollies will retain green leaves, throughout the winter, and depending on how they grow and where they're placed, they will help with the replacement of, that screening for views. But I don't see an intent to replace the relative screening from before to what is being proposed in this restoration. It seems as though it's more of a potentially more appropriate vegetation based on the environmental conditions, although it's different than what was there. And it sounds like at least 1-to-1 and maybe a little bit more, because it's going to, it's ultimately going to grow and create some benefit through growth over time. So, I'd ask Tim to maybe make a comparison, what was there and what is proposed, since they've done quite a bit of analysis of the information that's been presented.
Okay. If there's nobody else, we'll adjourn this for all purposes, unless you have something to say.
Yeah, I do have something else. This doesn't, two wrongs don't make a right, and we're here to remedy this situation. And there's nothing, but sometimes you do have to look at the bona fides of the objectants. So I did go down today with Tim, and I will affirm to you that what I'm handing up to you, and again, this is not to suggest any mitigation to this, just to talk about maybe the bona fides of some of the objectants. This is looking at the property to the south. I'm standing, this is what you see where I'm indicating with my finger is the area on the Fitzgerald property that will be revegetated, generally. This is the property to the south, directly adjacent to the south, one of the council's clients. And what you'll see there is right in the wetlands setback, a deer fence, and Leland cypress. I'm fairly familiar with Leland cypress, and they're very quick growing, but I would estimate, and Tim, who is much more expert on this, that these are 15 to 20 years old, well after the 1990s passage of the wetlands law, and grass right up to the actually under the westerly drip line of those Leland cypress. So again, I give that to you for what it's worth.
So these trees, these large trees that we're looking at are there right now?
They're there right now.
On the neighbor's property, one of the
On the neighbor's property to the south.
Not on this property, they're on the neighbor's property.
No, they're not on, as is the deer fence.
The property to the south.
The property to the south, which is one of the objectives. That's a deer fence and very large Leland cypress, which are not a native plant. They're an ornamental plant, and they grow very quickly, as probably everybody in Southampton knows. I would estimate the age of these trees, and Tim can give you more on that, if you want, from 15, at the most 20 years, but well after the enactment of the Village Wetlands Law, which would have required a permit to engage in this activity. And again, I just give that to you for what it's worth. We're here to try to bring this back. Mr. Voorhees is going to give us some comments. Mr. Rumpf is going to answer Mr. Voorhees' questions. We're here to work with the board. As you said, I didn't expect it to be closed tonight with your input, and we'll work with you.
I'm astounded that there've been a lot of wrongs in the village. And as Mrs. Nodisi had said, we're trying to correct that. The horse is out of the barn, but we're trying to do things to better the environment. And I honestly don't understand the logic of bringing up someone else's property, whoever it is, and presenting it to the case saying, well, they did something wrong, so we're not so bad. And again, it just gives you the mentality of the Fitzgeralds and their lawyer, and I think it's disgraceful.
I think he was trying to show that there's screening to the south. That's all I took it anyway.
No, well, that's not the impression we...
And then, one other thing, Mr. Calveri, who's an absolute gentleman, actually represented him in obtaining some wetlands approvals when he owned a house at this southerly end of Meadowmere Place, without a buffer, I might add, but that was at the infancy of the stuff. An absolute gentleman. I took a little advantage. I did take some umbrage to the use of the word fraud, but you know, people get upset when they're talking about their house in their village. I think what happened is there was some trees removed from to the west of the tennis court, which previously had provided some screening for Mr. Calveri, and I may be wrong, but those are trees in that area that are well outside of the wetlands, well outside of the wetlands boundary. So that, but I could be wrong. I think as I describe it, as Mr. Calveri described his property, it fronts obviously on the road, and we're a flag lot off it, but anything that was removed between, say, the tennis court and his property would have been well outside of wetlands jurisdiction.
Couple of comments. If you did represent us, you're not supposed to speak about it. Second of all...
It's a public approved plan.
Okay, but that aside, those aren't the trees we're talking about, because that we understand. But the whole, and if you would come to our house, you would see what we're talking about. We're talking specifically about the view that is covered by the wetlands tree. I understand those by the tennis court were removed, and we didn't object because we had no right to object, because it wasn't our property, wasn't on wetlands, and we never said a word. It's the ones that were 125 feet or whatever within the protected zone. That was the problem. And now we can see Kim's house, you can see the Wombold's house. I can give you, 6 other houses that we could never see before. And you can see us. We'll wave. Anyway, thank you.
Last comment, hopefully. The photo that he showed of the deer fence and the tree is on my property. I bought that property in 2002. I have a stamped survey from 1992 that was provided to me by the prior owner. Both the tree and the fence are located on that survey. So they're all pre-existing.
Therefore, we're going to hold this open, obviously. So I have a motion.
I move that we hold this open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll take those fancy plans then.
There's a lot of emotion here. Clear out?
I agree with trees and stuff, we'll gotta go back, but,
Hello.
On the application of case number 2964, Christopher and Jean Lynch, 58 Roscoe Drive.
I'll pass these down that way. Thank you. So we're here seeking relief, well, one, for a porch overhang, which didn't seem to be problematic, but you'll obviously tell us. I think the larger issue, of course, is the swimming pool. So we have revised the proposed site plan for redevelopment of this property. We had previously proposed to locate a pool 44.7 from Roscoe Drive to the west, and that plan now locates the pool 50.1 foot, and what it does is not only does it meet the accessory setback at 50.1 feet, but it's behind the house, so it's not in the front yard, as we all know very well. When people come to you and ask for variances for relief from the front yard, the first thing you see is, does it meet the setback? Well, so the other thing we did is the neighbors were concerned that the size of the house was driving, although it totally conformed, was driving the location of the wetland, I'm sorry, of the wetlands on my mind, I'm sorry, of the driving location of the proposed pool. So what we did is we shifted the house, and I have the site plan from the surveyor. I'm sorry, excuse me, from the, I apologize, I'm feeling a little under the weather, I'm trying to get through it. We have a site plan from the project architect. So we shaved 7 feet off the house, so the house is not near the maximum house size. And what that allowed, and we also significantly reduced the pool. The pool was originally at 19.5 by 35. It's now at 13 by 28. We have a landscape plan as per Mr. Guzowicz's suggestion. I also have some photographs. You'll see that that entire bend is significantly screened. There is a 6-foot fence, which is part of the certificate of occupancy. Candidly, I don't know how it got there. It doesn't look old enough to have predated the limitation on fence height in the front yard, so we're proposing to remove 2 feet, well, just take the 6-foot fence down and put a 4-foot fence up there. But most important is the pool was reduced in size from essentially 20 by 35 to 13 by 28. And that's important. The board did want to see, let me see if I can get it. The board did want to see some, the minutes of the prior application that was withdrawn. I do have that. The building department, as always, was very helpful. But that was a 20 by 40 pool, and it was a request for a 30-foot side yard. So what have we done here? We've done what you see oftentimes. We've made sure that the pool conforms in every area that it can, i.e. we've shifted it 20 feet from the property to the east, so that it complies with the required 20-foot setback. We've moved it 51 feet from the, I guess, the westerly part of Roscoe Drive. And behind the house, so there's no need for relief whatsoever there. And then we've shifted it 50.1 feet from the, I guess that's the southerly part of Roscoe Drive. And, you know, this is something that you're quite used to seeing, which is a request for a front yard variance for even larger structures, for tennis courts, that although they don't meet the prohibition against structures in the front yard, they do meet the required accessory setback. And how did we accomplish that? We listened to the neighbors. There's a little bit of you know, people buy a house and have a vision for it, and then sometimes they come to me and I throw cold water on it, unfortunately, to a certain degree. But I told the neighbor that the only way that this works is to reduce the size of the pool, but also reduce the size of the house. We also reduce the transition between the house and the pool. So now you have a situation where the pool complies with all requirements except the prohibition on one road of it being in the front yard. And then I have some photographs, and I won't belabor them, but just you see it's pretty clear that there's very significant existing screening on the property. Large maple trees, I don't know, that looks like they're in the right-of-way, they're street trees, but nevertheless they do exist. And we're going to augment that substantially by Mr. Rump's site plan. I just want to make sure there's nothing else that had to give to you. Did we talk about the Hawks Hill case? You thought, I think Kevin, you might have thought that was a Hawks Hill case. It was Pulaski and North Woolley Street. you thought that was a different situation, but I just give it to you for your consideration. Yeah, it was a front yard variance, but in any event. Yeah, it's a pool. But in any event, it's hard. People, you take these cases as you see them, and, the lots tend to be...
The minutes that you gave us, I'm glad to see that I was consistent 10 years ago.
You certainly were consistent.
Right now.
You certainly were
Exactly
consistent.
the same thing as I said last month.
Well, yeah, how do I say this? You guys are always very fair.
Thank you.
And
We appreciate that.
And I've been appearing before you, and I'm thankful to be able to appear before such a consistent and respectful board. It really makes my practice wonderful and bearable. But I looked at this one, and I know there are cases that...
I'd love to be praised, thank you.
No, that's okay. It's good. Take it, because I mean it. And I mean it. But I looked at this one, and I thought this was not one of those. You've had cases before you. I think you had one a couple months ago where it was the second go-around on like a 50-foot lot. And, that's
on Elm Street.
Yeah, that's just... I understand that. But this one, if you look at it, because of the size of the lot, because of the ability to achieve the 50-foot setback, because of the fact that even at 50 feet, you don't have what you had in the last time, which is, I understand Mr. Douglas is concerned, well, you have it at 30 feet, and then you have the coping, and the next thing you know, you're halfway into the right-of-way. I just respectfully think this is not one of those where you can say right off the cuff, this is not a lot that supports a pool. Mr. Rump is going to tell me about his, he's going to tell us about the landscaping plan.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Tim Rupp from Forest Design.
Before you go on, so this record doesn't get totally confusing when one looks back on it in the future.
Right.
It looks to me like you submitted a survey showing a revised proposed swimming pool.
Yes.
I don't see a revised date on that survey. If we refer to the date on the survey, I think it's the same date as the prior plan. I know you changed the plan.
No, it was, the surveyor was a little bit tardy. I asked him to get what he could get, and certainly that would have to be amended to correct that. Indeed, if you'll look at this, and forgive me, I should have said it.
Yeah,
this is an email of the survey and a color photograph. So
I'm just mentioning it for the record. If at some point you could
yes.
resubmit this proposed swimming pool, with a revised date on it.
Thank you. Tim, anything else, Rick?
That's why I wanted to get up before I forgot about it.
Thanks.
Texas? No, that's right, that was my file.
What we have in front of you is the planting plan over the top of an aerial. If we start on the south side of the site, this is South Roscoe Drive South, what I would call it. You'll see the pictures or the photos that Mr. Bennett showed or produced and gave to you shows 4 large Norway maples, a couple of them in very poor shape, that are located within the right-of-way, but next to the property line. You'll see the 6-foot fence, existing 6-foot fence that's there now. And what we're proposing in this area is to replace that 6-foot fence with a 4-foot fence and add a double row of evergreen plantings that will take the shade of those Norway maples, and then we're proposing English holly in that area. And that those hollies will wrap around the corner and north up to the existing privet hedge.
How do they do in the shade?
They do very well in the shade. One of the things that I've talked to the client about is talking to the village and maybe helping them and, trim those maples, because there's a lot of dead wind in the maples that could fall in the right-of-way and damage cars or people walking in the streets. Some of those are in very poor shape, but they can be pruned and kind of cared for a little bit. There's been no care on those trees since they've been planted. So if we go to the west property line back by the pool, this area gets much more sun, and we're proposing to put, there's an existing privet hedge there now, and on our side of that privet hedge, we're proposing to put 14 cryptomeria, which will do very well in that full sun. Again, an evergreen tree. If we move to the corner of Roscoe and Adams Lane, which is to the north of the property, you'll see we've located some existing Norway maples that you can see on the site. Again, those need to be taken care of a little bit and need a little bit of pruning and things. And in this area, we're proposing, there is an existing hedge, which you can see on the photos that Mr. Bennett gave to the board. We're proposing there to use cryptomeria as well on the inside of that existing hedge to provide for additional screening, year-round screening, especially around where the new parking court's going to be for the project. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
I think I do, I listened to there's a bit of colloquy between the board and Mr. DePietris, and one of the objections, I think it was Mr. Weinberg, who said, they want this maximum size house and then want variances for the pool, which are being created by the size of the house. So I took that to heart, and I told the client, you're going to have to make a choice. I'm not going to be able to get you the maximum size house, because you can't build a maximum size house and then say, give me relief for the pool. So that it has been cut down by 7 feet. And again, and they all,
Well,
we
which
also,
direction is the 7 feet been reduced?
it's been taken away. I know we cut it
From
down
the
by
south?
7 feet.
Or total of 7, 3 here and 3
Total of 7,
Okay.
yeah. I should have the answer for that, Kevin, I'm sorry. I don't.
But you still need the variance for the front porch, for the front.
Yes, we still need a variance for the front porch.
So you don't know how many square feet of living area you've reduced?
Probably in the nature of 200 or 300 square feet. But what it does do is it allows the, and we also tightened up the transition between the house and the pool. So it allows us to achieve the 50 feet. And of course, we shrunk the size of it, so. I would agree with you that not every property can support a pool. I would agree with you also that not every property can support a 20 by 40 pool. But I think this property supports this rather minor pool. I don't see it because, the village established a setback from a noise point of view of 20 feet. We meet that here, and gosh, as it relates to the properties to the south, not only do we achieve the 50 feet, but it's probably over 100 feet to the houses. Just easily by the right-of-way is 50 feet, and then you have the setback. So I think we've tried hard. Pool is obviously a nice amenity, and as long as it's not going to have any negative impact on, any unreasonable negative impact on the neighborhood, and I would suggest that because of this, our ability to realize these setbacks, there is actually a pool permit for this property. It was, but it was arrived at in what I thought was just an unacceptable way. I thought I had that. If I don't have it, I'll submit it. There's a pool permit to install a pool on the property, and what was done was a house was constructed that had sort of a 7-foot or so flange of a house that came out to the west and therefore enabled the pool to be 50 feet from the road and behind the home. It was a rather awkward, unusual looking shape. It
I
had.
don't recall that application, though.
No, you wouldn't have, because it was a building permit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'll get you that. I'm sorry, I
Didn't
don't
come
have
here,
it.
I mean.
Excuse me?
Did not come here.
No, it wouldn't have, because they did find a way to make it conform, but it resulted in a house that, there was a 7-foot wing, which you could use sort of as a pool house area. It just didn't look that great. So, so there is a way to gerrymander a pool in here, and I just thought you'd know that. And my apologies, I should have that permit for you, but I'll get it for you.
Was that before we had the last application, or since, or?
That was after the last application was withdrawn. So after the last application was withdrawn, the then owner went in and obtained a building permit to put a pool on the property. I will tell you, I can only describe it as a rather gerrymandered house. Oh, here it is. And I'm going to put this in the file. Unfortunately, it's my only one. There's a building permit 9879. You can see what was done there.
Why don't you lay it down and I can get it on?
Oh, very sorry. The flange of the house came out, which although it was attached to the house, would sort of function sort of like an attached pool house. And what that did was allow the pool to be behind the physical part.
So they just
of the
made like a
house.
hallway and then put, just so they could get this pool in the
You can
backyard.
do it. It's really sort of, excuse me, it's sort of funky, but it does work. But it's not a great solution. So, but anyway, I'll put that in the record, and then I'll go get a copy of it from the building department, because it's the only one I have here. So does it support a pool? Yes, as of right, but not in a very good way. Which is why we're here. Sometimes conforming things are not as good as things with the variances, but in any event.
Rick, did you have anything?
No.
Is there anyone in the public who likes to hear of this application?
I did get a telephone call from one of the neighbors after the last meeting and before your work session, asking me to explain the normal procedure, and I told him that typically applicants try to get plans submitted, any revisions submitted by the work session if they're able to, so that the board would have an opportunity to look at them before the public hearing, that if something were submitted by the work session, they could go look at the zoning board file to look at it before tonight's hearing, that if it wasn't submitted by the work session and they presented it tonight, typically, typically with them not having seen it ahead of time, you would adjourn it so they could study the plan. I don't see anybody here tonight, but in light of that conversation, I think you should adjourn it for all purposes, because I know there was neighbor interest in what revised plan might be filed, and if they had come tonight, I know they would have been asking for an adjournment.
I would certainly consent to that. Not that you need my consent.
Good point.
Therefore, I move that we adjourn this for all purposes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, would this plan be helpful, or one with the aerial on it? Because I didn't submit that. I can submit it to the file at the building department
Yeah.
if you thought that would be helpful. Was that?
A little bit smaller than that might help.
11
Well, unless you want to give the building department the whole thing, and have them keep it there.
Well, I can make these and fold them up and put them in the file.
Obviously, it won't fit in here.
Right, right. But we can do that.
Okay, thanks. You got the little file over there? I think that one's got the new cases in it.
2965.
Thank you. That brings us down to the new cases. First one being 2965 Woldon Manor LLC, 16 Gin Lane.
Good evening. For the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, South Main Street, Southampton. Hopefully this will be a fairly quick and simple application.
Gil, you always say that.
Well, I try to set a good tone. Plus the fact I know Mr. DePietris wants to get out early, so I'll try to accommodate him.
Dan, you're on the microphone.
That better?
That was Dan.
Okay, this is a simple request for a front yard variance to 73 feet from Gin Lane to construct an at-grade spa in the patio adjacent to the existing swimming pool, which is located on the east side of Gin Lane. The application would not need any other relief. It would conform with coastal erosion, dune setbacks, and any other setback except a setback from Gin Lane. Now, if you looked at the materials I submitted, including photographs and site plans, you'll note that there's an existing swimming pool that lies to the west of the house. There's a patio around it. The proposal is to put the spa at the west end of the patio, but between where the spa is and the pool is, before you get to Gin Lane, you encounter the pool house, a shed, and a brick wall. So I would submit that there would be absolutely no negative impact on the character of the neighborhood. Nobody will even know the thing is there. I don't know how much more I really have to say about it. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
What about the option of putting it at the other end of the pool?
We looked at that. If you did that, it would be right up against the house. There's really not much. We looked at that. There's not much room there.
So it's within the patio?
It's within the existing patio, and it's, if you will, landward of 3 other structures that are between it and the street.
You have a shed there that backs up to the street?
There's a shed that backs up to the street. There's probably an 8-foot brick wall that backs up to the street, and the pool house is also between it and the street.
Former McGowan house at one time?
Yes, it is, yeah. Formerly Vince Commuto's house, same property. You've seen it before.
No questions.
No problem.
Rick,
No questions?
anyone from the public wish to be heard in this application?
Good.
Why not?
In view of the location of the proposed spa within the existing patio adjacent to the existing swimming pool, and in view of the existing buildings located between the street and the proposed spa, and upon considering and balancing all relevant factors, we find that the requested variance is warranted, period. Therefore, we grant the requested variance for the proposed spa with a setback of 73 feet from the street.
I move we accept this decision as stated.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next one?
67.
Next one is 2967.
Go again.
Go again.
I got that one.
On the application of case number 2967, David Bonnet Living Trust, 484 First Neck Lane.
One for the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton.
See, this is a wetland application.
This is a wetland application.
We went out in the hall a while ago.
That'll give me a chance to get my next one.
Okay.
Get him.
There you are. Who said you left?
I was listening.
And for Mr. Voorhees' edification, this is an application for a wetland special permit for certain improvements at the property at 484 First Neck Lane. I'll note at the outset that we're not looking for any zoning variances, no dimensional or setback variances. This is a wetland special permit application only. The purpose of it is to permit certain additions to the existing improvements which exist on the property. I will hasten to point out that The major portion of the additions, construction to the existing house, are beyond the wetlands jurisdiction and do not require any wetland special permit. Most of the wetland setback relief involves walkways, patios, and slight expansion of some of the existing features on the side of the house facing Agawam Lake. Early on, I did have a discussion with Mr. Voorhees, and he suggested that we not propose anything that would be any closer to the wetlands than existing construction. And as a result of that discussion, we modified the plan and moved certain things back and shortened them so that they would be no closer to the wetlands than what is there now. My application included some previous history on this property, including a wetland special permit for landscaping that this board reviewed and approved in 2006.
Do you have something that you can lay on the table so we can pick it up with the TV?
I have a number of things. I don't want to clutter it up too much. I can certainly do that. Okay, this is the site plan that was submitted with the application, and there's been a very minor modification to it on something I actually submitted today, and if anything, it reduces what we're looking for. You see on this map, there is a parking area that is located at the northeast corner of the existing parking. The neighbors to the north had some concern about that. It's an informal parking area now. They had some concerns about it, so we've actually eliminated that. We've brought it back in line with the gate that shows on the map. In fact, I should probably get that plan out and lay it in front of us, since that's the one we're going to be looking at. And I'm sorry I couldn't submit it before today, but it took the surveyor a little bit of time to make the change. Bear with me 1 second, here it is. And the only other change we made on this map is we showed the location of a proposed project limiting fence to protect any activity from the wetlands. So if you see on this plan where I'm pointing, that projection of parking area has been removed. And in addition, as a result of a comment made by Whitney Stevens, whose property is immediately to the north, we also agreed to install some additional plantings between the parking area and his property line. It was also provided in a landscape plan, which we submitted today as well. And that was last revised a few days ago. Again, you'll see the parking area ends here. It used to extend out this far. It now ends at where this gate is. And we've agreed to install a row of plantings along the north line so as to buffer the parking area from the neighbors. And by the way, all of this is outside of the wetlands jurisdiction, but we wanted to let you and Mr. Stevens know that we agreed with his modifications and we've made them. And I think his attorney is here, and I've provided him with copies of this so that he can know that we did what we said we'd do. Now, it's important to note, as I said before, that this property received review in 2006 for a wetlands shoreline restoration, and I gave a copy of that complete application, that complete decision to you in the file. As you may or may not know, to the extent that it's relevant, my client has been one of the moving forces in the Lake Agawam revitalization project, and he is very sensitive to the need to preserve that buffer. And I've also submitted some aerial photographs which show the health and well-being of that buffer. It's quite substantial as it is, and he's been a good steward of it since it was installed about 10 years ago. One of the advantages of this application is that as part of the work we're doing on the house, there's going to be a new sanitary system installed, which is, I think, 221 feet away from the wetlands, whereas now the existing system is about 180 feet. So it's a non-conforming older system. It will be replaced with a conforming system that meets Suffolk County Health Department standards. We also submitted before the work session a construction methodology narrative, which was prepared by Scott Baker, the architect, who was here if you have any questions of him. I think that's it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide any additional information, and so would Mr. Baker.
No.
No.
Gil, I would request one thing, and that would be to show the setbacks on the plan, the village setbacks.
Okay.
Just because it's hard to tell the jurisdiction areas.
Okay.
And what's being changed within those
Sure.
areas.
Okay.
And I did notice that there was a supplement to the file that talked about permeable patio and sidewalk.
Yes, yes.
Could you describe that a little bit?
Sure. In fact,
What I'm getting at is I would typically look at the change in hardscape within the setback area. So we don't have the setback area, and I don't quite understand the change in the hardscape that's taking place. I also didn't see an existing conditions survey in the file of the house and the improvements in that area.
Okay, I
So
can get you
think
that.
that would help, and a comparison would help.
I'll do that. I have the letter was dated May 23rd. It was submitted by Scott Baker, and they were, I think this is what you're talking
Yes.
about. Scott, I don't know if you could provide any information on,
Just inquiring about
put your name for the record.
Scott Baker, 20 Atlantic Avenue, New York. So the permeable material is in these areas here and here where we need new walks. This is existing and is already crab orchard stone. So the plan was to leave this, and all the new walks on the water side of the house would be permeable material. It doesn't, I don't know if it indicates it on the survey.
It's not labeled as permeable on the survey, but the location of it is shown on the survey.
Yeah, this didn't get labeled on the survey. It's this and this. This is existing. So this is all permeable.
And that's a slate patio, it says.
Well, it's not slate, it's really crab orchard, I mean, it's stone.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted an explanation of that.
That's the only area where we had proposed permeable paving, just those two walk areas on the water side. Right.
Right, I think everything else we're doing is behind the wetland, the 125-foot setback anyway.
Yes, the landscaping, but there is
Right.
a structure setback as well.
Right, yes,
We should
right.
also compare.
Okay, so we'll show the village setbacks, and we'll get an existing conditions map for you.
You know, the reason I asked is I see one environmental benefit, and that is to relocate the sanitary system so it's conforming. And I think this board would benefit from the knowledge of, is there a change within the landscape setback area that would warrant any additional buffering down along the shoreline, or an expansion of what's being maintained as a natural buffer area. And it may be that it's not, but that analysis would help us to determine that.
Okay. Very good. I have nothing further. If you want to, I guess, adjourn for all purposes.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to be heard of this application? No? Therefore, I assume we're going to adjourn this for all purposes. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I think the intent would be if we can provide Mr. Voorhees the information he wants before the work session, we may be able to move forward. But that's what we'll attempt to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's get out of your way here.
The application of case number 2968, Southampton RE Partners, 95 Down East Lane.
last time this evening, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, for the applicant. I also have a number of members of the construction and project team here to assist me in answering any questions that the board members or your consultant or your attorney may have. So I should put out a map. This should be sufficient for purposes of the camera. This is actually a two-part application.
This is down.
Okay, I just didn't want to interrupt. This is a two-part application, the first part of which requests a front yard variance, but not a street setback variance for the proposed tennis court, and also for a mechanical shed, which, as I understand it, contains some of the equipment for the geothermal well system. Although it should be noted that the tennis court actually observes a setback of 100 feet from the cul-de-sac at the end of Down East Lane. And the equipment shed, I think it's 90.1 feet from Down East Lane. Again, the setbacks conform, it's just that the fact that some of that construction is closer to Down East Lane than the house that's currently under construction. Now, you should know that all of the construction that's going on there, if you visited the site, is the subject of active building permits and approval, which was obtained from the BEC, the Health Department, and the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation, so that you can see there were a number of permits posted at the property when you went there. The location of the tennis court in large part is driven by the location of the wetlands boundary. We designed it so that we would not need any wetland setback relief for that construction. And as you know, the code says if there's a tension between a wetland setback and a zoning setback, the zoning should be flexible, although in this case we're not looking for setback relief, just relief to locate the structure partly within the front yard. Now, this property does have some history to it, which I pointed out in my application. This was the subject of a recent proceeding before the planning board, which enabled the subdivision of this property into two parcels. There was 85 and 95. This is the development of 95 Down East Lane. As an aside, it was an unfortunate situation because before we were involved, it was two separate lots, which someone else inadvertently merged, and we had to go through a re-subdivision, which actually made more sense, equalized more of the area of the two lots. It's important to note that when the planning board reviewed this, the planning board did quite a bit of environmental analysis in looking at the subdivision design, and they were particularly concerned about wetland buffers, also nitrogen loading on the entire site. So the plan that you have in front of you takes into account the concerns that were raised by the planning board, not only for this site, but for the site that's immediately to the north and east of it. Now, the wetlands part of this application does not involve any structures, but rather it involves landscaping and grading activities only, and including some Phragmites control and removal along the shoreline of Hetty Creek. I have a number of people here who can talk a little bit more about that in depth, who know a lot more about it than I do. It is important to note that a major concern of the planning board had to do with nitrogen loading, and I submitted the information that came out of the planning board review, and as it turns out, the current plan for this lot and its improvements only amounts to 176 parts per million of nitrogen loading. Planning board resolution stipulated no more than 2.81 parts per million. And the way we've designed it, if both lots are developed, will be at 2.76, which is below the number that the planning board stipulated. So this landscape buffer has been designed with that whole concept in mind. And I did give you for the file a copy of the covenants and restrictions that impose that requirement. The landscape architect's plans do contain a number of pieces of information, including a site plan that showed the former improvements, then a site plan and schedule, and also a detail of the removal of the Phragmites, which is located on drawing L3. So if you have any particular questions, I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, someone smarter than me will be able to answer the technical ones. And by the way, I think Mr. Voorhees' office was fairly familiar with this because Kathy Eisman from Mr. Voorhees' office was intimately involved when we developed the plans for the subdivision.
Rick, did you have anything?
I'm just trying to figure out what this building is between the tennis court and the street.
It's a mechanical building that has to do with the geothermal well system, and I have Aaron Weil from Bates Massey Architects who can give more particulars of that.
I don't think we have any plans on that. Elevation, size? At least I didn't see anything.
No, we didn't submit anything on that. It's strictly an equipment shed.
Well, we don't, I mean,
Yeah, I understand.
we don't have any way of knowing what it is.
All right.
I'm Emily Levier from Inner Science, 36 Nugent Street. As part of the building permit for the other structures, John Foster's interpretation of that mechanical vault, because it's partially subgrade, was that it wouldn't require a front yard variance. We're showing it on the plans here just so you can see it, but I believe building permit number 12191, which was issued on November 23rd, 2016, included that structure. I will double check and I can submit a copy of that building permit to the record, but I believe his interpretation was that we didn't even need a
Either you are asking for a variance for it or you're not. If you are not, then you withdraw it.
Right, I wasn't aware of that. I'll verify that. If that's the case, we'll withdraw it.
I mean, I don't know, if it's partially above ground, I don't know how it could not be in a front yard, but...
Well, if there were plans submitted for it and the building department passed on it, I'll find out about that.
I have a elevation and section of it. The floor is set at the elevation of the tennis court, which is sunken 3 feet, to elevation 3 foot above sea level, whereas the surrounding grade is 8 foot on the surroundings, on 2 of the sides, and a driveway on the north side is at the 3
The
feet.
shed is for geothermal equipment?
Geothermal wells, since
Why would they need a shed?
it's, the house is partially in a flood zone, and so the location of the shed is one of the few areas on the site that's outside the flood restriction. So by locating it there, we can get it below grade and minimize its impact. Otherwise, it would have to be above grade and part of the building envelope.
But geothermal wells are just wells. So
Oh, it's the pumping equipment for the geothermal wells. Circulation. There's also a generator proposed for that shed.
All right, so the geothermal pumps are going to be there that pump it from there to the house?
Yeah, it circulates it to the house from there.
Are they submersible wells?
The wells are submersible, yes. The pumps are in an enclosure. That is my understanding.
My name is Tom Horton from the Rainer Group, 43 Pinehurst Boulevard, Calverton, New York. I believe we are proposing 20 closed-loop geothermal wells, and they consist of poly tubing that goes all the way down, typically around 350 feet, and then it returns back up in that same well point. So as the liquid travels down the well, it cools and it returns back up in a cooler state, at which point it'll enter the mechanical room where it'll go through basically a heat sink or a heat transfer where it'll suck the basically cooler energy out, and then it gets transferred over. So it's really a whole process. There's no there's no pumps involved in the actual wells that we're pulling, the 20 wells. So it's really just the pumping equipment that's required to circulate that fluid throughout each well.
And you put it in the shed here rather than in the basement? There's no basement in the house?
I believe, as Aaron was explaining, because of the flood zone in the area, we're not allowed to have mechanical equipment in the basement of the actual house. So that's why it was located outside.
Yeah, noisy equipment has been isolated to the exterior shed for that reason. Otherwise, it would have to be on the first level of the house, which is not desirable.
Okay, I understand it now.
I think a fundamental question, though, is if the building department determined it didn't need relief, I'll get you something from them.
Well, if you withdraw it, it's not before us.
That's right.
The vote was on
That's right.
But if we're going to have to deal with it,
As I say, it may be academic, that's
we're going to need a lot more information.
The vote was on the plans and survey submitted for the building permit, and it's our understanding that it was reviewed and approved as part of the building permit.
We'll look into that and address that before the next meeting.
I have no more questions.
A couple of things. I do see very helpful that the plan includes amount of fill within the 125-foot area. And I do see the grading plan. And I guess I would just ask for an explanation of the need for that fill within the landscape area. I will say that this site is primarily established in fertilizer-dependent vegetation. And as Gil said, there was an extensive planning board review that I collaborated with Kathy Eisman on. And Gil even included the nitrogen budget calculations from that analysis. So we see this as a very beneficial thing. We see it as consistent with what the planning board was looking for through the subdivision review. And we're really replacing, for all intents and purposes, the entire backyard and the entire area within 125 feet with non-fertilizer dependent vegetation. So it's very good in that sense, and I'm really just looking at a couple of the details. So I would ask for just an explanation of the fill in the setback area. And then on the landscape plan, there are a number of areas of meadow where the square footage was noted and species were noted, and I don't know if there's an intent to provide seed mix or plugs. It has nothing about the density of plantings, whether it be plugs or pound of seed applied for the lower inundation zone, meadow, salt spray zone, and the upper meadow, as well as the understory inundation zone. So I think a little more detail may be needed there. As I said, the overall intent is looks good. And would like to review a couple of the things in a little more detail as far as the Phragmites control. There's a couple of narrow bands of Phragmites that are proposed to be restored. So again, that's a good thing. We'll just be looking in a little more detail at those, but if someone from the applicant's team would like to explain that, that would be helpful as well.
I can speak to the grading. Amy Medina from Michael Boucher Landscape Architecture. So there are a couple of reasons why we're proposing grading within the 125-foot setback. One of those is that we want the grading to feel as natural and in character with the site. And by expanding the grading into that area, we can create a more gradual slope up to the house. Another reason is that as part of the FEMA regulations for the basement, we have to have a culvert, and that culvert has to be within the building setback. And that exits at the 6th contour, so we have to be able to grade to that culvert. And if we didn't have grading within this area, the grading up to the house would feel very steep and kind of unnatural and out of character. So, and as far, sorry, did you have any other questions?
Where is the culvert?
The culvert is, I can point it out to you on the drawings.
This area you're pointing?
Right here. So that culvert has to be within the building setback, so we have to grade to that. And as far as the meadow plants, we're proposing 1-gallon plants within the inundation area. It's just too wet and there's a lot of pooling, so seeding and plugs just won't work so well. So we can provide more information on the density of that.
Density, spacing, things like that. Okay.
Of course.
That's all I have.
So I guess really as far as the fill, you don't need anything more from us on that?
No, the quantity's there, the explanation is provided. I do appreciate the nature of the grading and to create a more naturalistic slope and a gradual grade. It's not an excessive amount considering the large area that's being covered. That's fine.
All right, so really all we'll be providing you, I think all you really need is more detail on the planting in the meadows.
For the purpose of the plan, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to hear this application?
I am Americo Fiore. I am the neighbor of this property on the east side. I've lived there for about 50 years, and unfortunately I didn't get the variance because it was sent to my son, who is the owner of the property now. I am renting the house on 75 Down East Lane, and I'm very concerned about the variance that apparently, from what I hear, would indicate the tennis court to be very close to the house that I'm now renting, which belongs to my children, and about the noisy equipment that is going to be installed with this variance closer to the house. Tennis court also is a noisy area, and I'm very, very worried about knowing that the old property was 9 acres. Now I am faced with the situation that we'll have noisy equipment plus a tennis court about 20 or 30 feet from my living room. Because our house, which I'm renting, is very close to the east side of this property. Due to the fact of the wetland, we were forced to move the house that was planned to be further north, back toward the street. And so it results that the house is very close to the property line. It's about, I would say, 25 feet. I mean, the living room will be 25 feet. So there is a noise problem, tennis court problem, plus other things now I cannot estimate because I didn't get the plans. The plans were sent to my son in Connecticut, and they didn't get to me in email. So I don't know what the variance really includes. There may be many other things besides. From what I hear, I'm really very, very concerned.
Can you show us where the tennis court is in relation to this man's house?
Here's the tennis court. The map shows that the property is now a form of Beatrice Glass.
Now, this is Beatrice Glass. I am between Beatrice Glass and, what is the property line? I am on the east side.
I think actually,
This is your house, sir?
according to the tax, I think you're in a different section of the tax map.
5 is Brenda Blott. Do any of these names look familiar, sir?
I believe you're actually over here.
Well, I've lived there for 50 years almost, so I should know what I am.
What's the address, sir?
It's 75 Down East Lane. It's this property here.
Okay, that's yours.
Yes.
Well,
It's my son.
Okay, your son's, this is way over here.
9 is actually 85 down east.
Right, that's 85 down east. This property was all one piece at one point.
I know,
Yeah.
but I am 75 down east, which is this. So I think it's this. See, this is my house here.
Okay.
And this is the 20 feet from the property line, or 25 feet from.
Sir, the tennis court is on this side right here.
The tennis court is here, and it's 100 feet, more than 100 feet back from here.
Okay, so I was mistaken. Because
That's
I didn't
okay.
see
No,
that,
that's fine.
Because I thought the tennis court, from what I saw from the workers, was going to be on this side.
Oh, God, no. No. This lot is not even being touched. We're more than 100 feet back here, and we're 35 feet from this line, which is what the zoning requires.
Which house is this?
That's Beatrice Glass. So you're
used to be Beatrice
right.
Glass. Now it's Zirinis, I think.
Right. You're actually, I think you're over here.
Yeah, this is it.
Right. So Between, you're probably 200 feet.
What is 8? This is the whole property.
That must be yours, because this is the lot that we
What is
subdivided.
this line?
That's a 200-foot radius. That shows...
Now, this black line?
Yeah, that's a 200-foot radius from the boundary of our property.
Okay.
The village requires us to show everything within 200 feet. So your house is actually more than 200 feet away from the property line, so that means...
No, the property line, number 9.
Sir,
Our property line is here.
this is the subdivided property line. This was the original property line. So this piece was subdivided off of the original piece, so creating 2 lots.
Right, the lot lines, that's the one we're dealing with. So our tennis court, just to be clear,
It's a completely...
Dr. Fiore, right, is up more than 100 feet away, and you're more than 200 feet away from it, so it's probably 300 or 400 feet away from you.
From talking to my daughter-in-law, they were concerned about the wetland infringement. I don't know.
Well, the tennis court meets the wetland setback. The tennis court doesn't need any wetlands relief. What we're doing is actually
Now,
restoring.
where is the property, the noisy equipment that they are going to install?
It's 90 feet setback from this, so it's
on this side?
It's all on this side. In fact, maybe it'll help me if you look here. See, here's the end of Down East Lane, which is that. Here's where it is. That's 90.4 feet. The equipment, and it's a shed. It's going to be enclosed, so that's designed to control the noise.
Yes.
Okay. Your property is over here, way over here. So you're more than 300 feet away from where our activity is.
Okay.
And by the way, the tennis court is going to be sunk below grade.
Yeah, I know. We have a tennis court on the other side,
Right.
from the other neighbor, and
Right.
it's also sunk. It's right here, the tennis
Right.
court, and you still can hear a lot of noise.
Right. Well, I would doubt if you're
Even
300
bigger.
feet away, that you probably wouldn't. That's because your house is at least 200 feet away from here, and the tennis court's going to be another 100 feet away this way at its closest point. I think you were concerned that you were here. You're actually over here.
Okay.
It's even a different section of the tax map, because when I saw you were here, I looked, it's even on a different section of the Suffolk County tax map. So I think you'd be okay. I don't think that'll have any effect on you whatsoever, because you're here, and we're talking about doing something in here.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gil, for explaining that.
Okay.
I'd also like
Made
to
it clear to me.
What's that?
It did make it a lot clearer to me.
I'm glad I did something right tonight.
I should also clarify that the equipment is noisy compared to being on the first floor of your house, which is why we're locating it in a sunken concrete vault with the proper noise attenuation, mufflers, baffling, etc.
You're not going to hear it.
Not going to hear
it. It'll be, as I said, sunken.
No, I have it in my basement, and it's not even baffled in any way. I don't hear it.
Right, and by the way, you can see the relative relationship between the court and the surrounding properties on the aerial photograph, the Google Earth photograph that I submitted.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to be heard? No. Therefore, you're still going to give us something else, right?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give Mr. Voorhees some information on planting, and I would hope that if we get that to him before the work session, he's satisfied with it, then maybe we could go further.
You want to hold this open, or should we close it pending?
No, I think you can hold it open.
We need to
Hold it open?
We don't know if he's withdrawing the application for the shed or not. If he's withdrawing it, then we don't need anything more on that, or on the tennis court. But if he's going to pursue that, then we're going to need to know more about it. Elevation, plans, et cetera.
Well, I
have no idea what it's going to look like.
Right, I got you.
And it's in a front yard, that's why there's a front yard.
Right, I'm aware of that.
Variance needed for impact from the street.
As I say, the way I understand it is
I don't even know the size of it.
It's partially below grade, so
Looks like it's very long.
It's the width of...
Looks like it's 60 feet long.
50 feet.
So you can understand that without seeing any plans, we have no idea what this 60-foot by 7-foot, or however wide it is, building is going to look like.
I think my first stop is at the building
department. So it may be moot.
It may be moot. thinking it probably will be, so.
Okay, so therefore we'll hold it open for all purposes.
Right, and if we get, satisfy us, then maybe we can move forward with the next one. Thank you very much.
That's a motion. All in favor?
This is the ZBA, right? Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Gil.
Big deal.
Gotta get while the getting's good.
Good idea.
Gotta hit the road.
We got to start putting your cases at the very end.
Even early.
We're threatened to do that, but we've never done it.
What's that?
Move yours all the way to the end.
They've done that.
Maybe my last meeting
Your
next
last meeting, right?
all his cases at the end.
I don't understand why they're building such a big house.
I hope it doesn't happen, because then you'll blame it on me.
I probably will.
I say, you've been such a big...
But I might as well let you have your fun busting my chops.
You might as well, because I'm going to do it.
Sounds good. All right, have a good night. I'll see you next month.
Night, Chick.
Take care. Good night.
It's a big property, but it's got a lot of...
This isn't as bad as I thought.
Thank you.
You know, it's all, because it's all against Halsey Street, it's not against the neighbor.
Right, right. Last case of the evening. On the application of case number 2969, Lynn Butler, 92 Halsey Avenue.
Nobody's here.
There's nobody here. We have somebody here for Lynn Butler?
The architect, William Slate, so he's
Not here.
Not here, that's right. Well, then I guess we'll just have to adjourn this one for all purposes, right?
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move that this meeting of the 2017 May Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Southampton be closed. All in favor?
Aye.